injections are not safe in GP practice. Find out why.
Make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting through those throughout the show. But first, it's time for the latest news.
Good morning, it's 10:01. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Ukraine has refused to surrender in the port city of Mariupol, where residents are besieged with little food, power or water. Russia had given fighters in the city until 5 a.m. to lay down their weapons in exchange for safe passage out, but they refused. Meanwhile, the UK's Foreign Secretary has condemned what she calls the abduction and deportation of Ukrainians from Mariupol to Russia. It's after a Ukrainian MP claimed citizens are being forced to relocate to parts of Russia and work in poor conditions. The city is facing continued bombardment. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia has bombed an art school where hundreds of women and children were hiding.
People were using it as a hiding place from bombardments. There were no military positions there. There were about 400 people there, peaceful people, mostly women and children and elderly people. They are now under rubble. We don't know how many people have survived, but we do know that we will shoot down the pilots who dropped the bomb, like we have already shot down nearly 100 other mass murderers.
President Zelensky there. Emergency services in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, are trying to rescue people from a shelled shopping centre. A video from Ukraine's state emergency service shows a huge blast in the northwest suburbs of the city. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has said shelling hit residential houses and a shopping district. At least 8 people have been confirmed to be killed. He has since announced a 35-hour curfew in Kyiv from tonight. The UK's Ministry of Defence says Russian forces advancing on the city have stalled and the bulk of soldiers remain more than 25 kilometres from the city. Boris Johnson is to host a roundtable meeting with leaders from the nuclear power industry today at Downing Street. The Prime Minister says it's part of plans to wean Britain off dependence on foreign oil and gas. Speaking over the weekend, Boris Johnson said the government was going to place, in his words, big bets on nuclear and look towards smaller modular reactors as well as larger projects. A Chinese airliner with 132 people on board has crashed in China, state media are reporting there. The Boeing 737 jet crashed into mountains in the southern province of Guangxi, causing a fire on the mountainside. China Central Television has said rescue was on its way and that number of casualties are not yet known. There are no reports yet of what might have happened to cause the plane to crash. Labour is forcing an emergency vote in Parliament today following the sacking of 800 P&O ferry workers. The party wants to outlaw the so-called fire and rehire practices after the operator replaced staff with cheaper agency workers. The government has urged P&O ferries to pause the changes and says it's examining the contracts it holds with them. The Chancellor could slash fuel duty in his spring statement on Wednesday. There are suggestions Rishi Sunak could temporarily cut the tax paid on petrol by as much as 5p to support families and businesses through the cost of living crisis. Average prices are currently at a record high. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary John Ashworth told GB News this doesn't go far enough to support families and urged the government to pause tax rises.
Rishi Sunak in his mini-budget this week has got to take action to support working people and pensioners who are literally facing choices between freezing or starving. They were the words of money-saving expert Martin Lewis. We need action this week to support working families and pensioners.
Vulnerable people in England will begin receiving invitations for the spring COVID booster jab today. Those over 75 or who are immunosuppressed will be able to book themselves in, whilst local NHS teams will contact care homes to arrange the jab for those who are eligible. It's being made available to around 5 million people, with 600,000 expected to receive invitations in the first week. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe will speak publicly alongside her husband for the first time since her release from Iran. The British-Iranian landed back in Britain last Thursday after the UK finally agreed to settle a £400 million debt dating back to the 1970s. She'd been detained in Iran for 6 years. Before the conference, the pair will meet with the Speaker of the House and her local MP, Tulip Siddiq, who long campaigned for her return. And the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have been chocolate tasting at a Belize cocoa farm as part of their Caribbean tour. The visit was a last-minute replacement after residents from another village protested about the royals' helicopter landing on a local football field. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. It's back to The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin Iman. I'm Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined to kickstart your day, so here's what's on the menu.
Absolutely, there we go. Ukraine has rejected a Russian deadline to lay down arms in the port city of Mariupol, stating there can be no talk of any surrenders. The bombardment of the city has left hundreds of thousands with little or no food and water, with more than 3 million people now displaced. We're going to be crossing live to Hungary to hear more about the people forced to flee their homes.
Yes, the man accused of the murder of Sir David Amess faces the first day of his trial at the Old Bailey. Ali Harbi Ali denies all charges. Our Home and Security editor Mark White will bring us the latest.
Yes, indeed. And in other news, Wales has made smacking children illegal. We'll be speaking to a parenting expert a little later in the show. Head over to Twitter for our poll on this right now and let us know your thoughts on that at GB News. Take part in that poll.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on patient safety at GP surgeries.
Patients aren't safe at GP surgeries. This is because of a lack of time GPs spend with patients, misdiagnoses and administrative issues. A recent poll of 1,395 GPs found that only 13% said their practice was safe for patients all the time. Meanwhile, 85% expressed concerns about patient safety. 2% said that their patients were rarely safe. 22% said they were safe some of the time, and 61% said that they were safe most of the time. It's concerning stuff, isn't it? Apparently, GPs are so overworked they will end up making the wrong decision and patients will suffer as a result. But I just don't really buy into that GP narrative. They claim staff shortages are the problem, i.e. we need more GPs, and yeah, fine, I'm sure we do. But what I think people will find really interesting is that former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt had pledged an extra 5,000 GPs by 2020, but he claims that he missed that target because more retired early than joined. So, in essence, the money is so good as a GP that you're able to check out early and put your feet up. What age are you going to be able to retire people at home? Does your job pay you enough to put loads of money away in a gold-plated pension? We all know that there's a huge backlog in the NHS. Waiting lists, of course, are at record levels and are set to increase. And in fact, it's predicted that in a couple of years' time, we could have almost a fifth of our population on an NHS waiting list. There have been something like 750,000 missed cancer referrals, people spending their life savings paying to go private for routine operations. And at the same time, figures from NHS Digital show that GPs earn an average of 98 grand a year. There are also 7,447 GPs with incomes of between 100,000 and 200,000 pounds a year. Now, I'm all for people being well paid, don't get me wrong, but when one of the reasons that we have a GP shortage is because they're so well paid that they can retire young, then I suggest other GPs don't have too much of a leg to stand on when it comes to complaining about the shortage of doctors. We desperately need to clear this backlog in our NHS, and one way, of course, to do that is to make GPs' practices open at weekends, and now the government is introducing that very measure, to work from 9 till 5 p.m. on a Saturday. This is common sense. There has to be more time available for patients to get the appointments that they need. How have GPs reacted? Well, they've said they're bitterly disappointed, and it would demolish their spirits and devalue their goodwill. Goodwill? I don't recall there being too much goodwill involved in misdiagnosing people over FaceTime instead of seeing them in person. Also, there's a little bit of manipulation of the figures going on here in terms of GP workload. So apparently, the total appointments delivered in general practice last year was 367 million, the highest ever, and 17% higher than for 2019, before the pandemic, of course, happened. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you realise that a total of 29.1 million appointments happened in general practice in the December, right, of which 3.9 million were COVID vaccinations. And GP practices will receive £15 for each jab given from Monday to Saturday, that's up from £12.58, and £20 for jabs on Saturdays and bank holiday vaccinations. So it would appear that GPs are taking time out of patient appointments to administer vaccines, for which they are paid quite handsomely. GPs seem very quick to play the pity card. In reality, it's the patients who I feel more sorry for. patients who are probably on a lot less money than their doctor, struggling to get an appointment, who are misdiagnosed, only to be told that it can't possibly be the doctor's fault. Bear in mind that GPs have a very powerful union behind them. I think it's time someone stood up for the patients. Yes, well, firstly, I've realised that we're actually quite colour-coordinated today.
Are we?
But, yeah,
oh, yeah, like blue.
That's probably missing the point somewhere. But, yes, OK, so, look, I'm quite angry with GPs, really, in a sense. And I know I don't want to use too much of a broad brush when it comes to this kind of stuff, but there is a lot of money swirling about GPs. There is a lot of money being pumped into our health service, and it doesn't sit well with me personally when I see them complaining potentially about maybe working slightly longer hours in the week or working at weekends, also for which they will be paid.
I mean, I think it's entirely legitimate, you know, as an employee of any organisation, to be a GP or otherwise, to be able to organise and complain about your particular pay and conditions. And if they think that it's unfair and that they do a lot of work already, then I think, you know, that's fair for them to do so. And I think I'm not sure I buy into your such strong criticism of GPs. I do think that they do a very important job. When you talked about the percentages that were paid very highly, I mean, it's far less than what the Prime Minister is paid. And so in that sense, if you studied for 5-6 years, as they do, and have been working in that particular field for decades, I don't see any problem if you've set up your own GP practice to take that.
No, I don't have any issue if they're being very well paid to do a very difficult job. Of course, the Prime Minister is running a country, so I think you could. This may be a slightly false narrative there. But look, for me, I was very, very scarred by what happened during the pandemic, with GPs maybe being quite reluctant to go and see patients in person, for example.
But we know that was a complaint for many different industries. We saw the teaching unions doing the exact same thing. We saw civil servants doing the same thing. So perhaps they are just acting in line with a lot of the dominant narratives at that time.
100%, and I take that on board. I'm not particularly happy about it, but I can understand where you're coming from with that. And look, for me, I do just question whether or not actually at the state they've always got the patient's best interests at heart. But there we go. Keep your views coming in. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, well, it's day 26 of Russia's invasion, and Ukraine has rejected a Russian ultimatum to surrender the besieged city of Mariupol. 400,000 people are currently trapped in Mariupol with limited aid and supplies, and 3.1 million people have been forced to flee the country. Well, let's speak to our reporter, Rosie Wright, who is in Hungary for us. Rosie, thank you very much. So where are you exactly and what's happening right now?
A very good morning to both of you. Yes, we've gotten on a train. We've just been at Zahon, which is the main border crossing by train from Ukraine into Hungary. Many families, women, children, making that border crossing, finally getting to a place of safety and then being reunited. Now, we're on the train to go from Zahon to a town just an hour away, where you then have greater access to Hungary, routes to Budapest. And on the train with us are Anna, who's 8 years old, and her grandmother, Erica, who've been reunited this morning. Erica, how are you feeling to have your granddaughter sat with you next to you on the train?
Я дуже щаслива. Я про це дуже давно мечтаю.
For a dream for me, you know, to reunite my family. I came yesterday to CHOP. Yes, I came from yesterday to CHOP, you know, to collect my family. Now we are going to Nerithaza city.
And it must feel totally surreal to watch this happen over the last few weeks. What is the plan now for Anna and I know your daughter-in-law as well?
Взагалі зараз плани у вас на майбутнє. Ми зрозуміли, що війна в Україні, і у вас, і у Анни, які плани зараз на найближче майбутнє?
Спочатку, по-перше, я би хотіла сказати, що ми угорці на Закарпатті.
First of all, I would like to say we are Hungarian in the Transcarpathia region, in part of Ukraine.
Нам дуже прикро і дуже.
It's upset, and we so worried about the Ukrainians, about us in Transcarpathia also, because I have plenty of emotions, because we are because it shows a lot of Ukrainians, you know, they feel so bad because of the war in Ukraine. For me, it's difficult even to explain how I feel now.
Україна це все-таки наша батьківщина.
Because Ukraine is our country.
Ну, я хочу чуть-чуть поговорити і про найліпше, про дітей.
But now I would like to say about my granddaughter and about what we're gonna do next.
Що дитина тепер їде на тиждень навідати кресну маму, їде навідати тата.
The family now is reunited. In next week, Anna, she, spent one week in Hungary to feel better.
На жаль, що сім'я не разом.
Unfortunately, the family not together now. We understand what is going on in Ukraine, because it's so different. It's so bad times in Ukraine.
Радуємося, що живі, здорові.
We're happy that we feel good and we have opportunity, to collect my family to Hungary. Thanks God for this.
За це.
Thank God for everything of this.
And Anna, how are you feeling to be back now with your grandma?
Як ти чувствуєш, що ти з бабушкою зараз їдеш в Угорщину? Як ти себе почуваєш?
Я дуже заскучила з
I miss of my family, miss grandmother.
татом.
My father, I miss so much for my father.
І ще за свою працю.
It's also my mother-in-law. I so miss them.
What did it feel like to say goodbye to Ukraine?
Як ти відчуваєш, що ти сказала до побачення зараз в Україні? Як ти себе чувствуєш? For me, it's difficult even to explain. I don't know even how to say that it's a pity, yeah. No, I feel so bad because of the situation in my country.
I'm sure you do. You've got a week now in Hungary. What are you most looking forward to?
Тебе є тиждень зараз в Угорщині. Що б ти хотіла побачити? Що б ти зробити за цей тиждень?
Хочу побачити дельфіна.
I would like to see the dolphin, real dolphin. It's my dream.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Just 8 years old, exceptionally brave. I just want to ask your grandma again, really quickly. You've got now time to work out what the plan is going to be. What is the next week going to look like?
Як буде наступний тиждень виглядати для вас? Чим будете займатися?
Я спочатку хотіла сказати, що
First of all, I would like to say to show the television. I didn't trust what is going on in Ukraine, but when I see the situation, I would like to say a lot of good volunteers in Hungary. I was crying because a lot of Hungarian people from charity organization give us a food, everything for Ukrainians. That we say they give a lot of products, a lot of foods, a lot of candies for me. I'm so happy.
Amazing to see you smiling. Thank you both of you very much for talking to us and letting us spend some of the journey with you. One family reunited this morning as of many that we've seen at the station in Zahon. They'll be moving in about 45 minutes getting off the train to then go to their local village and spend at least the next few days there working out what the next chapter looks like.
Well, thank you so much, Rosie Wright, for bringing us that report. After the break, should smacking your child be illegal? Well, from today, it will be in one part of the country, in Wales. We'll be getting stuck in that in just a moment. But first, let's head over to the news.
Actually, I think we're going to do weather. To be fair, I was smacked quite a lot as a child, and it's never really affected me massively. So I think we'll be all right. We'll get stuck into all of that later. Keep your views coming in, GBviews at gbnews.uk. Right, now, in the southwest, there will be some cloud around, but for many, it will be mostly sunny. Whilst you can't rule out the odd shower, it will be largely dry. In the southeast, it will be warmer than yesterday with temperatures in the mid-teens Celsius, and it will feel warm in sunny spells. Much of Wales will have a largely sunny day, and as well as that, temperatures are going to be higher on Sunday. There may be a little more cloud around parts of the Midlands this lunchtime. It will stay dry, though, and most of us, of course, we'll see a bit of the sunshine anyway breaking through the clouds. And I think we're going to whiz over now to the northeast. Yes, we are. After the Midlands, obviously. Further northeast, it will be mostly sunny with largely blue skies. Temperatures may be a little disappointing though, getting to highs of around 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. So that was similar to yesterday for many. We can expect some cloud around Aberdeenshire. And here are a few showers, of course. They're possible at least on the coast. Otherwise, it will be a sunny picture across Scotland, though not especially warm. In Northern Ireland, it is looking dry, and whilst most of us should see some sunshine at times, there will be a fair bit of cloud around as well. Temperatures widely in double figures. Staying fine for most of this afternoon and evening, though. Cloudy for some, and 1 or 2 showers are possible. And that, just about, is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's 10:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falariman on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, well, smacking, hitting, slapping or shaking a child is, from today, a criminal offence after the Welsh Government deemed such acts are not necessary when disciplining a child. Joining us now to discuss this. Well, firstly, in fact, before we discuss this with a guest, we're going to get some thoughts from GB Views. We've already been having some reaction to the smacking story, as well as your monologue, Patrick, on GPs. What do you think?
Well, here we go. So, Graham's been in touch. Let's stop smacking the Welsh. He suggests that we should be smacking somebody else instead, but of course I would never say anything like that on national news about Mark Drakeford. Also, a lot of people getting in touch really just to say that they agree with this idea that the child smacking should be stopped. However, Barrington, fantastic name, Barrington. All of us between 60 to 75 years old were smacked at home and at school for being naughty. None of us hated our parents or teachers. I think there's a bit of a generalisation, but I do take your point.
Roger Mattox says, smacking children. I had a happy childhood and fantastic parents. I was sometimes unruly and occasionally gave my parents a hard time, resulting in the occasional smack. I have no mental health problems and have done reasonably well in life.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I was very rarely smacked. But I think every single time I thoroughly deserved it. Yeah. And then when I think I got to about the age
I can believe that.
Yeah, I think I got to the age of about 14 or 15 or something, and I realised I could just get out the way of my mum's smacks. And so it just stopped.
I wasn't smacked as a child, if I'm being completely honest. But I do think when you have a young child, you know, you can't always reason with them. If they put their hand on a fire, you just give them a quick tap And it's just, it's almost like a bit of a wake-up call. I mean, you see it, you know, even lionesses in the wild, they'll give their cub a little tap, and I think that is entirely reasonable. I think we need to trust parents to be able to know how to raise their own kids and not trust the Welsh Government to tell parents what to do with their own children.
Well, this is it, isn't it? You led me seamlessly on to my next point there, which is that is this yet again the state getting involved in people's lives and people's parenting? I can completely understand that they don't want it to go too far, but that's why we have child abuse laws, that's why we have social work.
That's already, and this is the thing, that's already an offence. If you are physically abusing a child, that is a criminal offence. And I think that oftentimes when we have these blanket laws, then we actually miss the specifics of genuine abuse rather than parents, you know, and there's many reasons. You have, you know, particularly from ethnic minority communities, obviously sometimes it does go too far, but they often do have very traditional disciplining practices, and I think that you might argue that that's some benefit to that. If anything, you can make the case that not disciplining kids has gone too far, in my view. Oh,
I could agree. I could agree with that, actually, because, you know, look, now, we've got a very woke culture now, haven't we, and this, that and the other, but hang on a minute, I think it's a bit of a overstretch and overreach of government power, and Joan agrees. There's no government has the right to dictate whether or not you can discipline your own child. This did no harm to myself growing up. The reason we have these feral kids going about in gangs is because there's no discipline at home or at school. Exactly. We're not talking about child abuse, it's just a small tap. And I think that's really, really interesting, actually, and I kind of want to delve a bit deeper into where all this has really come from, because has there been this massive clamour? And presumably the child would have to report their parents to the police.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things now that I think it does corrode the relationship between parents and children, because now parents can go, well, I'm going to tell on you, and they have someone now to actually tell, and that's actually the police, even if it's a little smack. So I think it is a slippery slope, and I think that we should trust parents by and large.
Yes, parents are going to be living in fear of their own children, aren't they? But anyway, now we're going to go to our Wales reporter, Lily Hewitson, who has a report on this very issue for us.
In Wales, smacking children will become a crime. The new law removes the legal defence of reasonable punishment, meaning anyone who smacks a child, even a parent or guardian, could be prosecuted for assault. The Welsh Government passed the law change 2 years ago. By banning smacking, ministers say children in Wales are now given the same protections from assaults as adults. But not everyone agrees. According to Welsh Government research, 1 in 4 people say physical punishment is needed to control children's behaviour, teach respect, and show boundaries. I spoke with Simon Calvert from the Be Reasonable campaign. They're against the introduction of the smacking ban in Wales.
And what we're talking about here is the mum who taps the toddler on the back of the legs or on the back of the hand for doing something wrong. That's what we're talking about. The previous law was very clear that anything that a parent did which left anything more than transient reddening of the skin was already illegal. So the change that the senators made to the law, by definition, is only criminalising the mildest possible contact between a parent and their own child.
However, many support the ban. 38% of people said they did not agree generally with the physical punishment of children. Nearly 20% said there are other ways of ensuring good behaviour. And 10% said smacking is abuse or could lead to abuse.
The studies show there's really compelling evidence that there's no good things come from smacking or tapping your child, but there's a really broad range of harms, harms to the child's physical health, emotional health. It makes them more likely to have mental health problems as adults. It's associated with children growing up and smacking their own children, or even domestic abuse and domestic violence. This law isn't about criminalising parents or bringing the law in that way. This is about enabling useful discussion and debate and educating us all to parent in a more effective and kinder way. So we need more support for parents who are struggling.
Parents like Simon say using force on a child is wrong.
From my point of view, I don't understand why someone would have to smack a child. I guess that's kind of easy from my point of view because I've got a very well-behaved girl. I've never had to go to those sort of extremes, and nor would I even contemplate doing so. But I guess the ban coming in will help. Like if I see something, say in the park like this, if I see someone smacking a child, I wouldn't comment. However, this ban coming in will make it more easy for people to approach people and say, everything all right here?
Not everyone who smacks a child from the 21st of March will be automatically prosecuted. Wales's 4 police forces have been encouraged to consider a rehabilitative alternative to prosecution if this is more appropriate. Lily Hewitson, GB News.
Yeah, interesting package that. That's from Lily Hewitson there, of course, our Wales reporter. We've got a poll online at the moment at GB News. And should smacking your child be illegal? No, 81.8%. Yes, 18.2%. And you picked up on something there, saying this isn't about criminalising parents. Well, it literally is about criminalising parents, isn't it? And that lady said she only wanted a discussion.
Yeah, and I mean, exactly. I mean, you don't implement laws in order to initiate a discussion. You would hope that discussion would happen, before the law. But also, you had the parent there, really good that he came and put forward his views, but he said that he doesn't understand why parents do it. Well, there's many parenting techniques that one might not understand. That doesn't mean that you criminalise it. I don't understand when I don't know, parents put makeup on their 3-year-old daughter. I mean, but that doesn't mean it should be criminal. I mean, I agree with that. So that's an interesting. We have a different perspective on that, and that is you have your own parenting technique. Why should the police or the state get involved in that?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And also, how often do you see parents, right? They've let's say they're in a rush or something, and the child's really playing up, and they've got to get that child from A to B. You do see them. They've got them by the hand, and they're kind of not dragging them along the floor or anything like that, but moving them quite forcefully. Is that abuse? Now I don't really see if that necessarily is.
Also,
you don't. Also, the other thing is, sorry, but. You don't currently have to smack your child. No one's saying, right, well, before this law came in, you've got to smack your child twice a day. No, you just do it if you want, you don't do it if you don't want to. What's the kind of problem with that? I don't understand.
I would really push back against this idea that parents who smack their kid, it's because they've lost control or they're angry or they're taking things out on their kid. I think a minority might be doing it for that. But I think, as I said before, that there's a completely rational way. If your kid is about to run out onto the road, then you say, no, that's not okay, and you might give them a little slap if they're a young child. I really do not see why that is morally wrong. If they are going beyond that, then that is already covered under existing law.
Yeah, and what bothers me more than the idea of someone giving their child a little smack is when, things like, we're letting them assign their own gender at the age of 7, so we'll give them a neutral name. These are the kids that are running up and down restaurants, playing hide and seek under your table while they're there, while their parents just sit there and drink wine and go, isn't he lively? He's not lively, he's an absolute nightmare.
Well, I think you make a good point. I mean, so, kids can have puberty blockers and make decisions that completely transform, their fertility, their body and their life, but a parent can't, give a kid a small smack, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. What about smacking parents? Maybe we could bring that back. Anyway, after the break, we'll be talking to Leroy Logan, MBE, a former superintendent and founding member of the Black Police Association, about child Q. A really interesting, well, depressing story, really, this. The 15-year-old black girl was strip-searched at school after being wrongly suspected of carrying drugs. There's a lot more to it than that as well, which we'll get stuck into. But before that, this is After This Morning's News.
Hello, it's 10:34. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Ukraine has refused to surrender in the port city of Mariupol, where residents are besieged with little food, power or water. Russia had given fighters in the city until 5 a.m. to lay down their weapons in exchange for safe passage out, but they refused. Many of the city's 400,000 citizens remain trapped. At least 8 people have been killed in Kiev after a shopping centre was shelled. A video from Ukraine's State Emergency Service shows a huge blast in the northwest suburbs of the city. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has said shelling hit residential houses and a shopping district. A Chinese airliner with 132 people on board has crashed in the southern province of Guangxi, causing a fire on the mountainside. That's according to state media. China's Central Television said the jet involved in the accident was a Boeing 737 aircraft flying from the city of Kunming to Guangzhou. The number of casualties is not yet known. Labour is forcing an emergency vote in Parliament today following the sacking of 800 P&O ferry workers. The party wants to outlaw so-called fire and rehire practices after the operator replaced staff with cheaper agency workers. Labour is to call on the government to suspend contracts with the company's owners until the matter is resolved. The government has urged the firm to pause the changes and says it's examining the contracts it holds with them. And Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe will speak publicly today alongside her husband for the first time since her release from Iran. The British Iranian landed back in Britain last Thursday after the UK finally agreed to settle a £400 million debt dating back to the 1970s. She'd been detained in Iran for 6 years. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to The Point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's 10:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falariman on GB News. As always, we're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, as we've covered, smacking, hitting, slapping or shaking a child from today a criminal offence after the Welsh Government deems such acts as not necessary when disciplining a child. Joining us now to discuss this further is Anna Cribb, a parenting YouTuber at Hey Mummy TV. Thank you for joining us this morning. Anna, I mean, what do you make of this new law that's been placed in Wales? Do you think it should be a criminal offence to smack your child?
I think it's a fantastic law. It's protecting children, and it's something that, you know, should be a blanket ban on people to use physical violence to kind of discipline children. There are so many other ways that we can discipline children, or we can teach them right from wrong.
Yeah, OK. I mean, there are already laws in place to stop child abuse, aren't there? And smacking it, or I suppose the word smacking might be exaggerating it somewhat as well. You know, a little tap or something like that. You know, surely the state shouldn't be getting involved in how parents parent their own child.
I absolutely think that we should. I think, you know, we should be helping parents. I think there should be a lot more support online for parents, and I think those things are starting to happen. There's a lot more support for parents out there, and I think that's one of the things that they are bringing in Wales as well. You know, so that parents can learn how to parent in a more gentle way.
What do you make of the point that Patrick said about the fact that abuse is already covered under existing law? So isn't this just muddying the waters and actually just bringing more parents who are loving, care for their kid and have a particular parenting style and criminalising them?
I don't think you can call it a parenting style to smack your kids. You know, I think it is wrong. I think it's just something that needs to be banned so that parents can learn other ways to teach their kids. And I don't think there's...
Yeah, but Anna, I mean, Just because you personally think it's wrong, why should that mean it should be a criminal offence? Because that's the specifics here. There's lots of things that many people think are wrong. Infidelity, for example, but that doesn't mean it should be a criminal offence. I mean, why do you support the criminalisation in this instance?
Because children need to be protected. We as adults are not allowed to physically fight each other when we get upset about things, and there are laws in place to protect adults, and there should be laws in place to protect children. Children are smaller.
But children aren't adults, and just as, for example, I don't look after an adult, and generally speaking, unless they have particular care needs. Why should it be the same? We understand that parents have particular responsibilities and rights over their own child, and therefore, across the board, we don't treat them the same as we treat adults. So why should behaviour with adults as strangers be treated as the same as your own child?
I think because, we're teaching them behaviour that's going to continue for the rest of their life, and how to deal with things, how to deal with situations. And actually, we can do that in a very gentle, loving way, instead of an aggressive, physical way, because that's how they're then going to react to things for the rest of their life.
Do you think I think it's fair to say that most people who are probably in their 60s or 70s, maybe even 50s, were quite possibly smacked as a child, potentially even at school? And I don't think there's any evidence to say that that's caused widespread psychological damage, is there?
I think you'll find it has. I think you'll find there's a lot of adults in therapy who do have to deal with it, and there wasn't the protection back then, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we're protecting children now. I certainly have managed to parent my 3 boys without physical violence, without physically telling them off. There are other things you can do. You can remove devices, you can remove things that they love playing with, you can give them time to think about stuff, you can discuss things. Give them time.
What if the child is violent towards you?
Sorry?
What if the child's violent towards you? So you're taking little Timothy's PlayStation away or something, and he kicks off, and he kicks you, or he punches you, or and he's having a massive tantrum. Is smacking okay then?
No, I don't think it's okay to retaliate. And that's what I teach my children as well. I say, if somebody hurts you, you don't retaliate. You do something about it. You take the right steps to deal with it. And actually, by dealing with violence, I think saying it's violence, I think, is really quite strong language. I think if a kid runs into the road, puts their hand in the fire and giving them a tap, I think a lot of people would not regard that as violence. And I think it's really important, don't you think, to differentiate between acts of violence that are harmful and abusive, and actually discipline within the normal boundaries of parental behaviour. I personally don't think it's needed. I don't think you need to tap a child for getting something wrong. I've managed to get through parenting my 3 children to teenagers without doing it. So it's possible to parent in a gentle, loving way.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know it's great to have the discussion. It's a massive debate. Surely Anna Cribb there, a parenting YouTuber at Hey Mummy TV. So there we go. We're going to move on from that now, but keep those views coming in. There is a Twitter poll online now at GBNews. So far, 81% of you think smacking your child shouldn't be illegal. But anyway, just moving on from that for now.
Yes, yesterday, hundreds of people gathered in London to march in support of Child Q, a black 15-year-old girl who was strip-searched by the Metropolitan Police whilst at school. The incident took place in 2020 when the young girl was falsely accused of carrying drugs. She was removed from an exam to her school's medical room and was strip-searched whilst on her period by 2 female Met Police officers searching for cannabis. The Met Police have apologised, with Scotland Yard saying its officers' actions were regrettable and it should never have happened.
Yeah, it comes in the wake, really, doesn't it, of a discussion that we were having last week about stop and search and this, that and the other. This obviously is a slightly different scenario, but it kind of follows on from that. Now, several high-profile cases of misconduct, both racial and sexual, has led to widespread mistrust of the country's largest police force. And Leroy Logan is a retired police superintendent, a founding member of the Black Police Association, and is chairman for 30 years. Thank you so much for taking the time, Stuart. It's great to have you on the show. Just give us your initial thoughts, anyway, on what we know about what happened to child Q.
Well, from what I have read in the report, the officers responded to the school staff request to search the young lady in question, child Q, on the suspicion of possession of drugs because they smelled cannabis on her. The staff had already carried out a search. The officers then conducted a search that was far beyond the reasonable grounds that were given because, one, the outer clothing had already been searched, but also they went on to do not only a strip search, but an intimate search without the appropriate adult being present or another member of staff. And of course, that's totally in contravention with the codes of practice under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act and far beyond safeguarding and trauma-informed policing.
Yeah, I mean, Leroy, the police have said that it should never have happened and it was regrettable. But do you see this as a kind of individual case of something horrific or a systemic problem? You know, a review of stop and search of 9,378 found that in 81.7% of cases there was reasonable grounds to stop and search. So in essence, the overwhelming majority of instances it's been used, there has been reasonable grounds. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think that it is something that is used too excessively and it's a systemic problem, or this is a kind of individual case where something wrong has clearly happened?
Let me say first thing, having used stop and search many times in my career, it is a good tool, but even though it needs to be intelligence-led. So it's a blunt tool sharpened up by community intelligence to ensure that you target the right people who are getting up to no good, whether it's crime and other matters. So as a result of that, you are able to reduce the impact of people going about their normal business. Unfortunately, the Met has been using stop and search indiscriminately for decades, since the SUS law, and then when the Police and Criminal Evidence Act repealed that in the early 80s, it has continued. And the race problem plays itself out in the disproportionate number of black people that searched. You're 9 times more likely to be stopped if you're black than you're white. You're 3 times more likely to be strip searched if you're black than you're white. So this is an endemic problem that's not being dealt with. Now, these officers have carried out this search totally in breach of their protocols and the codes of conduct, as I've already said. And as a result of that, you wonder why. Well, that is through the culture, very, very strong culture in the Met, which I experienced for 30 years, that influences people's application of the law. You can have as many strategies as you want, but culture eats it for lunch and dinner, not to mention breakfast, because of the way in which it overrides the objectivity and the intelligence-based approach to it. And the other thing is, we've seen that young black people is being shown as an adult. They've been treated like adults, even though they're young people. So they don't have the appropriate support and safeguarding principles. So this young lady, child Q, was subject to a double whammy. She was black and female. As we know, the Met Police is institutionally sexist as well.
Do we know for sure? Sorry to just quickly. Do we know for sure that the police officers who were doing this weren't black themselves?
No.
Would that change your opinion on this story if it turned out that they were?
Well, I doubt if a black officer would have gone to that extreme, because the cultural competence, the shared and common experience, and that's why you need a reflective organisation, so that you reduce these sort of instances and you instill more trust and confidence, because these sort of instances actually erode trust and confidence. And the Met is going through the least amount of trust, especially in the black community, and for females for the last 20 years. So it shows that they're doing things over and over wrong, and it has to stop.
I mean, on that trust point, the data is quite clear on this. I mean, particularly Black Caribbeans have a comparatively low level of trust in the police. But when you talk about that point on culture within the police, I mean, what do you say to the other side who says that actually Black communities in particular are also disproportionately impacted by crime? And we know for some of the data for young Black boys in particular are significantly more likely to be a victim of murder. And so do you worry about the other side, that, you know, police are also trying to police in a very difficult environment, and there are mistakes that are made and that there are challenges that are made, and it's difficult negotiating that balance?
Well, I think you bought into a certain amount of data manipulation, because if you want to talk about disproportionate number of people subject to knife crime or gun crime, it depends on the context in the city or the town. You'll have disproportionate number of those crimes in Leeds committed by white people, or in other white majority cities and towns. So that is a false data that you really need to look into very carefully. But you also need to understand that the majority of Black people are housed in the most deprived areas. They've got the most highest number of depravity. So the actual services they receive are under the norm. Also, the type of policing is very heavy-handed. So Black and minority ethnic communities are housed in these areas. And as a result of that, the self-loathing and the infighting you find, especially when it comes to drug supply and everything, that can be replicated in any town or city. So let me just tell you this. Crime has no colour. Crime is crime. And policing should be done regardless of a person's background or culture or colour. And it has to be done appropriately and professionally, intelligence-led. And until that is sorted out with the new commissioner, changing the culture, dealing with the systemic failures of racism and sexism, we'll be talking about this for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, again, it could be. Look, we are, unfortunately, we've run out of time on this, Leroy. I could talk to you all day about it. Really, really hope that you do come back on, because, you know, these kind of conversations need to happen. Of course they do. But, you know, one way I've always wondered about maybe trying to solve this issue is potentially to try to entice more ethnic minorities into the police force. And
well, that has been something that people have been putting forward and trying to do for a number of years.
We need to do more of it. Anyway, Leroy, thank you very much. Leroy Logan there, retired police superintendent, and of course, a man who very much knows his stuff on this issue, a founding member of the Black Police Association, and indeed its chairman for 30 years. Cheers, Leroy. Right, OK.
I just want to make a quick point. I mean, Dame Cressida Dick, because on that point of statistics, I think it is really important to mention. Metropolitan Police Commissioner, obviously she's no longer the case. Defending the stop and search policy, said 72% of killings of youths under 25 years old involve Black victims in London.
Yes.
So I think, you know, that particular statistic speaks for itself, and it's not about kind of geography and so on. 72%.
Yeah.
You know, that is incredibly high.
Yeah.
That is incredibly high. I do think we have to understand things in the round, and I think that's just the point I'm
making. No, we do, undoubtedly. And also, in this whole situation now, we were talking about the police officers, of course, and look, it does look as though they've massively overstepped the mark, potentially, but what about the teachers as well? You know, teachers calling in the police for... I mean, you'd be calling the police in every single day if you did that at certain schools.
Yeah, and as I said, there wasn't actually an appropriate adult present. There were clearly, undoubtedly, quite disgusting.
Do you want a mock exam? A mock exam for GCSEs as well? I mean, come on. Anyway, right, moving on. A much lighter story now to round off this hour. 25 dogs have been rescued from war-torn Ukraine by a volunteer from Staffordshire-based animal charity. Now, Alina Olifuruk, who is originally from Lviv in Ukraine, manages Poor Help Rescue and Adopt UK in Burton-upon-Trent. She says that some owners are heartbroken to leave their pets behind as they flee the Russian invasion.
Yes, Elena travelled to Calais on Sunday to collect 25 pups from volunteers who transported them safely out of Ukraine. Our reporter Bhavinder Sidhu joins us now.
Yes.
Well, tell us more about this story, Bhavinder.
Good morning, guys. Yes, I am outside the charity where Alina works in Burton-upon-Trent. We're here with Mila and Nadia. They are two rescue dogs from Ukraine. There's a big van behind me which rescued 25 dogs from war-torn Ukraine. Now, people have been helping in all kinds of ways, whether it's opening up their homes for Ukrainian refugees or collecting donations and taking them to the borders. But Alina here wanted to help the animals that were left behind by their owners. Alina, just tell me what motivated you to help the dogs.
I'm myself from Ukraine, and I've seen the amount of dogs that are on streets and needing help before the war, but now it's even worse, and I know how much they need us, and we try to do everything possible to help them.
What conditions were these dogs found in?
They've been found in different conditions, some being locked up without water and food, some being just let out on the street, scared and hiding. Some have just been dropped to rescue, with families trying to run from the war.
Some people watching and listening today might be thinking, surely our priority should be the humanitarian crisis, not animals. What would you say to them?
People are important, and helping families with kids and women, it's very important. But animals are part of our families as well, and we need to help them as well as much as we can.
Also, it's really important to note that your parents are still in Lviv. Can you just tell me, are you worried for their safety? Because they have chosen to stay, haven't they?
Yes, they decided to stay, and I respect their choice. They help us as much as they can. They foster loads of dogs for us before they're ready to go to UK. I'm worried every day. I try to keep in touch with them, and but we don't know what will tomorrow bring.
So anybody watching this show today, if they want to help, because I know Mila is looking for a home. This is Mila. She is looking for a home. How can they get in touch?
We have a Facebook for Help Rescue, and we have an Instagram page. So yes, please get in touch.
And the 25 dogs you rescued yesterday, where are they now?
They've been all found homes, and they are adopted all over the UK. Some went to Scotland, some went to Cornwall, some in all over the UK now. Dogs from Ukraine, it's great.
Excellent. Well, that's it from me. You know, these dogs are getting restless. One is now sniffing my tripod. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful report, Balvinder Sidhi there, and what tremendous work they are all doing. You want a dog?
Yes.
Why don't you go there and rescue a Ukrainian dog?
I think that's a good point. I would love to go to a rescue. I love dogs.
Fantastic. Look, keep all your views coming in, GBViews at GBNews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after this break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning everyone. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Anaya Man on your TV, radio and online. We're here all the way through until midday. We've got loads of stories and we're going to go in on why patients are apparently no longer safe at GPs' practices.
Make sure you get in touch with your views. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, it's the latest news.
Good morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Ukraine has refused to surrender in the port city of Mariupol, where residents are besieged with little food, power or water. Russia had given fighters in the city until 5 a.m. to lay down their weapons in exchange for safe passage out, but they refused. Meanwhile, the UK's Foreign Secretary has condemned reports of abduction and deportation of residents in Mariupol. It's after a Ukrainian MP claimed citizens are being forced to relocate to parts of Russia and work in poor conditions. The city is facing continued bombardment. President Volodymyr Zelensky says an art school where hundreds of women and children were hiding has been shelled.
People were using it as a hiding place from bombardments. There were no military positions there. There were about 400 people there, peaceful people, mostly women and children and elderly people. They are now under rubble. We don't know how many people have survived, but we do know that we will shoot down the pilots who dropped the bomb, like we have already shot down nearly 100 other mass murderers.
At least 8 people have been killed after a missile hit a shopping centre in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. A video from Ukraine's State Emergency Service shows a huge blast in the northwest suburbs of the city. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has said shelling hit residential houses and a shopping district. He has since announced a 35-hour curfew in Kyiv from tonight. The UK's Ministry of Defence says Russian forces advancing on the city have stalled and the bulk of soldiers remain more than 25 kilometres away. Boris Johnson is to host a roundtable meeting with leaders from the nuclear power industry today at Downing Street. The Prime Minister says it's part of plans to wean Britain off dependence on foreign oil and gas. Speaking over the weekend, Boris Johnson said the government was going to place, in his words, big bets on nuclear and look towards smaller modular reactors as well as larger projects. State media in China is reporting there are no survivors from an airliner that crashed in the country with 132 people on board. The Boeing 737 jet crashed into mountains in the southern province of Guangxi, causing a fire on the mountainside. Media have quoted firefighters as saying there was no sign of life among the scattered debris. There are no reports as of yet on what might have caused the plane to crash. The family of a London student, Sabita Thawani, have paid tribute to their beautiful, irreplaceable angel. The 19-year-old was found dead at student accommodation in Clerkenwell in central London on Saturday morning. Her family said they pray for a day when girls and women are safe. A 22-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Labour is forcing an emergency vote in Parliament today following the sacking of 800 P&O Ferries workers. The party wants to outlaw so-called fire and rehire practices after the operator replaced staff with cheaper agency workers. The government has urged P&O Ferries to pause the changes and says it's examining the contracts it holds with them. The Chancellor could slash fuel duty in his spring statement on Wednesday. There are suggestions Rishi Sunak could temporarily cut the tax paid on petrol by as much as 5 pence to support families and businesses through the cost of living crisis. Average prices are currently at a record high. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary John Ashworth told GB News this doesn't go far enough to support families and urged the government to pause tax rises.
Rishi Sunak in his mini-budget this week has got to take action to support working people and pensioners who are literally facing choices between freezing or starving. They were the words of money-saving expert Martin Lewis. We need action this week to support working families and pensioners.
John Ashworth there. Vulnerable people in England will begin receiving invitations for the spring COVID booster jab today. Those over 75 and or who are immunosuppressed will be able to book themselves in, whilst local NHS teams will contact care homes to arrange the jab for those who are eligible. It's being made available to around 5 million people, with 600,000 expected to receive invitations in the first week. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe will speak publicly alongside her husband for the first time today since her release from Iran. The British Iranian landed back in Britain last Thursday after the UK finally agreed to settle a £400 million debt dating back to the 1970s. She's been detained in Iran for 6 years. Before the conference, the pair will meet with the Speaker of the House and her local MP, Tulip Siddiq, who long campaigned for her return. And the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have been chocolate tasting at a Belize cocoa farm as part of their Caribbean tour. The visit was a last-minute replacement after residents from another village protested about the royals' helicopter landing on a local football field. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. Let's return to the point.
Good morning, this is The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Florin Iman and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for your final hour, so here's what's on the menu.
Well, a new report says that 80% of GPs think patients are not safe in their surgeries. Only 13% think their practice is safe. One GP joins us to discuss what this actually means for patients as the NHS faces a record backlog. And keep your stories coming in to us, by the way, as well, of your experiences at GP practices.
Yes, the Labour Party is forcing an emergency vote in Parliament today to outlaw the practice of fire and rehire that they say enabled P&O ferries to sack 800 staff with immediate effect. Our reporter Ellie Costello joins us live from Westminster for more.
Are the government doing enough to implement the lessons from the Grenfell Tower disaster? Well, the Mayor of London says that they aren't. We're joined by a campaigner from End Our Cladding Scandal to talk about this in much more detail.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yes, it's day 26 of Russia's invasion, and Ukraine has rejected a Russian ultimatum to surrender the besieged city of Mariupol. Russia has said that civilians will be allowed safe passage if and only if the city laid down its arms.
400,000 people are currently trapped in Mariupol with limited aid and supplies, and 3.1 million people have been forced to flee the country. Let's speak to our reporter, Rosie Wright, who is in Hungary for us. Thank you for joining us again this morning, Rosie. Where are you exactly, and tell us what's been happening?
Yeah, we've taken one small part of the journey that hundreds of thousands of people have taken who fled Ukraine to then come to Hungary. We got on a train just about an hour ago from the border town of Zahon. There is a huge team assembled of volunteers that's now quite slick, quite well equipped, so that when people arrive, normally from a town called Chop on the Ukrainian border, that train station's just 2 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, people are then greeted with information, food, offers of free transport and accommodation. And crucially then, if you have your Ukrainian passport, you can get on one of these trains for free and get a solidarity ticket. That's what they're calling it. Now, we're shortly going to arrive into the 7th largest city in Hungary. It's the journey lots of people have been taking. The first part, and they might decide to travel on to Budapest. The family that we just spoke to had just been reunited an hour ago. It was 8-year-old Anna with her grandmother. They're actually going to spend the next week here in Hungary to take a little bit of time, re-establish things like schooling for Anna, who's just 8, to work out what the next few weeks are going to look like. Many families being reunited. Many people, though, I must stress, in Ukraine who would long for a safe passage, a safe journey like this. Lots of people unable to find safe, easy access routes out of Ukraine. Many of the people we've spoken to feeling immensely grateful and really thankful that they're now at a place of safety.
Well, there we go. Thank you very, very much, Rosie, for bringing us that report. Obviously, it's interesting to see, like, kind of first-hand, isn't it, really, the part of the journey that these people are taking.
And I think, you know, the fact that they called it a solidarity ticket, I think, is really powerful. I think it has really smashed a lot of the perceptions that had been put on Hungary and Poland over the last few years, that they're xenophobic exclusive and racist towards different groups of people, when actually they have demonstrated some of the most generous solidarity and open arms to the Ukrainian refugees, I think, perhaps in Europe as a whole.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Now, in response to the crisis in Ukraine, the former Defence Secretary, Dr. Liam Fox, has said today that our values are better than those of China and Russia, and we need to say so. He actually spoke to GBNews about the war and how our leaders should respond to it.
Why should a city like Mariupol surrender itself to a country that doesn't have a proper democracy, that doesn't have a proper rule of law, and doesn't have human rights? I think that's a very good example. And the reason that I wrote that article, as you know, is that when I was speaking to students in Poland last week, they were really mesmerized and bewildered by the fact that these things were happening so close to them in Europe in the 21st century. And these are youngsters who don't remember the oppression of the Soviet Union or the Cold War or the Berlin Wall. And the point I was making to them is that the freedoms that they have come to take for granted were hard fought for, that they're not the natural state of affairs. And people sacrificed enormously to give us the democracy, to give us the rule of law, to give us the human rights that we have today. And they have to be preserved from bad and wicked people like Putin, who would take them away. I'm talking about the value of the state. And we as citizens are able to have all these freedoms because of the nature of the government that we have, and Putin and his like, who have governed Russia for most of its history. They've never really had the tradition of human rights and democracy that we have had, and yet you're absolutely right. The basic yearning of ordinary people is to have these freedoms, to be able to make decisions for themselves, to have an objective rule of law so that they know where they are. And in systems like Russia and systems like China, it's what the dictator says that goes. And we've seen not only what they're willing to do at home, but we've seen in their invasion of Georgia, their occupation of Crimea, and their poisoning of their own citizens at home. And even here in the UK, we've seen what a state like that will do, which is why we need to stand up for our values. We need to be proud of what we are so that we can actually act as a beacon to the rest of the world. And that's why the struggle in Ukraine is actually so important. It's actually a trial about whether we actually believe in the international rule of law or not.
That was the former Defence Secretary, Dr. Liam Fox, saying to GBNews why he thinks that we should be proud of our Western values, particularly in comparison to those of China and Russia.
Indeed. Right, now, I did an opening piece about this right at the start of the show at 10 a.m. Loads of you have been getting in touch since, and I think it's been fascinating to read some of your responses to this. So the subject is whether or not you feel safe when you see your GP. Well, if a recent survey is to believe, your doctor may well think that you are not safe, because according to a recent survey, 80% of GPs believe that patients are being put at risk when they come for a standard in-person checkup.
That's really high.
Which is nuts, right? So the reason for the risk have been linked to things like staff levels, heavy workloads and pressure in the office. And joining us now is Dr. Rob Gill, GP and producer of the documentary The Great NHS Highs. Thank you very, very much. So one of the reasons highlighted in this report was that they think there's too few GPs, but also one of the problems with that is that many of them are retiring early, aren't they?
Yeah, sure. So early retirement will contribute to the lack of GPs, but maybe we need to ask ourselves, why are GPs retiring early? They're finding that there's been a major change in job satisfaction, workload intensity has gone up, there's a lot more fragmentation in care, and we've had a decade long of defunding of the NHS, which has meant more and more hospital services are difficult to access, and that again means more work on the GP's shoulders. So the environment within which GPs are working is becoming so stressful that people are looking for an early exit.
But also, there are a lot of people who are very dissatisfied with their job, but they're not in a position to be able to be financially secure enough in order to retire. And you said there about defunding of the NHS, and that's simply not true. And you must know that, Dr. Rob Gill. You look at the King's Fund here, in terms of billions, it's gone up consistently every single year since 2007.
Okay, so you need to look at the average, the increased settlement for the NHS year on year. The historical average has been around a 4% increase. In the last decade, the average has been around 1%. the statistics you
2020 and 2021 during the pandemic, when it increased absolutely massively.
Yeah, and where did the money go? 37 billion was squandered on Serco and Deloitte Test and Trace, which the Parliamentary Accounts Committee declared that didn't make a jot of difference to the handling of the pandemic. So money spent in the private sector is not an investment in the NHS, it's money squandered. The relative funding for GPs, which is about 9% of the total NHS budget, is inadequate. They're not, you're implying that doctors are, well paid and can afford to retire. They're being driven out of the system. If it was so well paid, why is there a recruitment crisis? So, newly qualified doctors are deciding to either leave the country, not come into general practice, or even go into a completely different field altogether.
Yeah, is it, maybe one of the problems that we've got at the moment as well has been some GPs have been deciding to obviously kind of prioritise the vaccine, haven't they, over actual face-to-face appointments. I have regular emailers in here, gbviews@gbnews.uk, who found it amazing that during the pandemic, they could not get an appointment face-to-face with their GP. But when they turned up to have their vaccine, there they were as if by magic.
Yeah, so, I can only tell you my own experience. So not only was I continued to see patients throughout the pandemic, face-to-face. I never erected any barriers to access. And my practice delivered the vaccines as required for my patients. So, there wasn't this two-tier availability, certainly that I'm aware of. I'm sure you'll find the odd example of GPs who are doing that, but that's not the norm. Most practices have done the vaccination in addition to their day job. And this was seen as a desperate way out of the pandemic. But it doesn't get away from the current situation, which is a manufactured crisis within general practice, because the fundamental direction of travel of this government is to privatise the health service. And there's a massive bit of legislation going through Parliament at the moment, the Health and Care Bill, which will further mutate us into an American-style healthcare system.
Well, I mean, we do know that the small element that was privatised actually did start under the Blair government, so it has been a long-standing issue. And I think it is slightly wrong to only associate privatised healthcare with America. There's many countries throughout Europe that have a hybrid model, so to speak, and have a very high-functioning healthcare system. But on that point that Patrick made, I mean, why do you think there is a disconnect then? Because you think that GPs have been treated unfairly, that it's been underfunded, and that there is a lot of dissatisfaction in the profession. Whereas some people, and many people that have been emailing in saying that they're struggling to get an appointment, that they're really worried that it wouldn't be safe if they even went there. Why is there clearly then such a disconnect between what you're saying and some of the things that, for example, Patrick has been mentioning?
Yeah, so I do not doubt there has been a problem in accessing GPs. That's been widely reported. But you have to understand why that problem has arisen. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we were issued a diktat by NHS England to more or less close our doors and shut down access. That was a government diktat. Now, I ignored that personally, and I think other people ignored that. I carried on providing normal GP services. Now, that has done a lot of damage. It set up a backlog within the system. It delayed access to GPs. Now, this was a service that was already overstretched. If you introduce such a disruption in service that the government did, we are now paying the price for that disruption. And people have very short memories. They forget the long, good service that they've been getting, and they're fixated on the relatively short-term poor service that they are perceived to be getting at the moment. But this has been an engineered crisis. So,
look, I just want to ask you one more before we.
And you're having these press attacks on GPs.
Well, no, look, it's not. It's easy for you to paint that narrative, as indeed is your right, absolutely 100%. I actually come from a family where we've had numerous cases where GPs and the NHS has got it badly wrong, sometimes resulting in death, actually. And I'm not alone in that regard. There are hundreds of thousands of people right there. I have also sat in on various cases where the General Medical Council has been looking at whether or not to strike someone off, and the argument always seems to be Dr. Gill, always seems to be, hey, look, I made a catastrophic mistake, but I was overworked, I was tired, and it's not my fault, it's a fault of the system. Why don't GPs just take responsibility, Dr. Gill?
Well, you have to look at each individual case. You know, if a GP was incompetent and failed, clearly he's going to try and deflect blame. But there are clear cases where the system is contributing to failure. So if you don't have enough time to make assessment of patients, you have a influx of demand, you start to take shortcuts, and that's what leads to mistakes. So you have to look at the system, busyness of the system, the complexity of the system, the fragmentation, the dumping of specialist work into the community without adequate resource to follow it. All these have an impact on patient safety. But fundamentally, if you look at the number of doctors per head of population in this country compared to equal economies elsewhere, European countries, we are the lowest of the league table.
All right. Look, OK, thank you very much, Dr. Rob Gill. Just quickly, because the BBC never seem to do this whenever they get a doctor on and they're talking about this. So, are you a member of a political party at all?
I'm not a member of a political party, no.
Good stuff. I just thought it's nice to ask because all too often it turns out that they are. Dr. Rob Gill there, GP and producer of documentary The Great NHS Heist. Thank you very much. Right, after the break, we'll be joined by our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who will bring us the very latest on the trial of Ali Harbi Ali, the man accused of murdering Tory MP Sir David Amess in October last year. But before that, let's have a look at this morning's news.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudier day compared to what many of us saw at the weekend, but staying bright and dry for most of us, and it will be a little warmer in the south as well. Areas of cloud are moving in from the west and from the south. That cloud thick enough in one or two spots to give the odd shower, for example, through parts of Wales and the Midlands. But for the vast majority, it's dry. Despite the extra cloud in the sky, it's bright and temperatures higher in the south compared to the weekend, 15 to 17 or even 18 Celsius, Cardiff to London. I think more like low teens further north for Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Then through the evening, a few showers arriving from the south. They'll be very hit and miss. Most places will miss them and they'll be fleeting anyway where they do occur. Away from the showers, there'll be a few clear spells, especially towards the northeast where a touch of frost is possible, and one or two fog patches in one or two spots as we start off Tuesday. But otherwise, it stays fine. High pressure is sitting to the east and low pressure to the west, and that's how things remain effectively through the rest of the week. So generally, that means that it's going to stay fine and increasingly sunny once again once Tuesday's early showers have pushed away. The cloud builds again into the afternoon, particularly across parts of the Midlands, Wales, Northern England and Southern Scotland. And once more, the odd shower is possible. But for the vast majority, sunny spells, certainly a brighter day in many spots, and a warmer day. 19 or 20 Celsius is possible somewhere like London or Cambridge, and those mid to high teens extend up towards Northern England and Southern Scotland. Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland seeing low teens. Into Tuesday evening, we'll see clear spells once again, and that leads us on to a sunny day on Wednesday, virtually across the board. A bit more cloud in the north on Thursday and Friday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that has been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Now, it is 11... No, it's about to go 11:27. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falariman on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, last year, on the 15th of October, Sir David Amess was stabbed to death as he held a constituency surgery, meeting the people he represents in a local church. Today, the trial of Ali Harbi Ali, the man accused of murdering the Conservative MP, is set to begin.
Well, Ali, who's 26, denies fatally stabbing the MP and charges of preparing acts of terrorism. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, is live for us now outside the Old Bailey, London. Mark, thank you very much. What's the latest, please?
Well, just over 5 months since Sir David Amess died of multiple stab injuries during that constituency clinic at a Methodist church hall in Southend-on-Sea. The man accused of murdering the Conservative MP is now about to go on trial. That process getting underway after some technical difficulties first thing this morning. They've sorted them out and they are in the process now of empanelling a jury. So first of all, they speak to the jury, just reminding them of their legal obligations. There's a bigger pool of jury members, about 30 odd people, and then from that they will select the 12 members of the jury going forward for a trial that could last up to 3 weeks, but is expected to be a bit shorter than that. In the dock is 26-year-old Ali Harbi Ali from Kentish Town in North London, who is accused of travelling down to Southend-on-Sea on the 15th of October last year and murdering Sir David Amess during this constituency meeting. He denies murder. As I say, he will now go on trial once the jury has been empanelled. That is expected to last a couple of hours, so we expect the opening statement to be delivered by the prosecutor in this case around about 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Mark, thank you very much for bringing us the latest. Of course, we all remember, don't we, though, where we were when that news started rolling in. Mark White, that's our Home and Security Editor. Yeah, we still all remember where we were, weren't we, when that David Amess news broke? I can remember there being initial reports of an air ambulance being called to the venue. Then it turned out that it was an MP and this, that and the other, and over the course of the next few hours, then it emerged that, of course, he'd been killed. Yeah, it was really, really devastating, really devastating. So, and actually, I think it was a strange thing, really, with what went on with Sir David Amess, in more ways than one, obviously, because, you know, there was the initial discourse, wasn't there, about what actually really had caused his death, and obviously we have to be very careful because there's an ongoing trial, as we see, but it raised serious questions about the online discourse, didn't it? And I'm not sure that's really the direction that we necessarily should have been pushing in when that was taking place. So I think there was a bit more to it than maybe some mean tweets towards MPs. But there we are.
Yes, no, I very much agree. And it was quite strange that the conversation had moved there so quickly. When, as far as, I mean, we're still finding out information on that. So we will bring you more as the trial continues.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, loads of you getting in touch. We're going to go to the views now, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Ben's been in touch. A lot of reaction to what went on there. We had a robust discussion, I think, with Dr. Gill about GP surgery. I thought he spoke very well, by the way, and certainly put his side of the case up very eloquently. Yeah, and here we go. Well, it's a bit mean this, but what a load of rubbish from the doctor you interviewed. Look at other countries' cheaper and better outcomes. It seems to be the case in this country. We just want more money, basically. That's from Patricia. Good name, Patricia. And yeah, a lot of people getting in touch about one of the issues that I had, do have actually, is about when GPs maybe make a mistake, as we all do, or people in the medical profession make a mistake, it's very quick to blame it on the process. You're overworked, you're overtired, there's administrative errors, this, that, and the other. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of personal responsibility as far as I can see all the time, and certainly some of you have been reflecting that. If I drive and make a mistake, will the courts take into account that I've been overworked and let me off for causing a serious injury? That's from Ron.
But I do think, when you are dealing with, often life and death situations on an hourly basis, let alone a daily basis, I do think that, that is a reasonable complaint to raise on the part of GPs. And I think that if the decisions that they are making may actually affect the health of other people, and they think that some of that is because they are overworked, then I do think we have to take that into account. We don't want to enable health outcomes to get even worse.
No, I agree. And of course, there was lots of questions there again about GPs
as well.
Well, you're smacking.
That's
let's do smacking.
Lots and lots and lots of views. A lot of people, I think, overwhelmingly disagree with the woman that we interviewed who suggested that it should be banned. And I think a lot of people have been picking up on this whole idea that because someone personally disagrees with it, whether or not that is a reason to have it a criminal offence for other people. And I think that seems to be a bizarre step that we're taking as a society. Because you disagree, that must mean it must be shut down completely. Can you not disagree with someone's parenting style? Could you not discuss or educate them, perhaps? But why do you want to criminalise them? Isn't that quite an extreme step?
Well, I don't always necessarily agree with various people's parenting styles. I mean, it's easy for me to say because I haven't got any kids as far as I'm aware.
There was one that I saw very recently. It was called, effectively, their parenting style was they would never tell their kid off. There was a whole documentary about it in Brighton.
In prison now.
Well, these parents who said they were never going to tell their kid off because they wanted them to be free. Well, I strongly disagree with that parenting style.
I don't agree with that kind of stuff. And, we're going to homeschool them all the time. OK, there can be reasons for homeschooling, but...
I'm quite pro-homeschooling, actually.
Yeah, but...
especially with the rampant, gender and ideology that is going on in schools.
Yeah, but this kind of stuff and of taking a very kind of come-by-our approach to parenting as well, I don't think always particularly works. That kind of hands-off style of, like you said, we're not going to discipline them. And then, like I said before, they're the ones running up and down the aisle on an aeroplane, kicking and screaming people, and they're just being told, oh, he's got a lot of character. Yeah, well, that character needs to be smacked out of him. Anyway, after the break, our reporter Ellie Costello joins us live from Westminster, where the Labour Party are putting pressure on the government to act after the sacking of 800 P&O ferry staff. But before that, it is a look at this morning's news.
Hello, it's 11:33. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Ukraine has refused to surrender in the port city of Mariupol, where residents are besieged with little food, power or water. Russia had given fighters in the city until 5 a.m. to lay down their weapons in exchange for safe passage out, but they refused. Many of the city's 400,000 citizens remain trapped. At least 8 people have been killed in Kyiv after a shopping centre was shelled. A video from Ukraine's state emergency services shows a huge blast in the northwest suburbs of the city. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has said shelling hit residential houses and a shopping district. State media in China are reporting there are no sign of survivors from an airliner that crashed in the country with 132 people on board. The Boeing 737 jet crashed into mountains in the southern province of Guangxi, causing a fire on the mountainside. There are no reports as of yet on what might have caused the plane to crash. Labour is forcing an emergency vote in Parliament today following the sacking of 800 P&O Ferries workers. The party wants to outlaw so-called fire and rehire practices after the operator replaced staff with cheaper agency workers. Labour is to call on the government to suspend contracts with the company's owners until the matter is resolved. The government has urged the firm to pause the changes and says it's examining the contracts it holds with them. And physical punishment of a child, including smacking, slapping and shaking, is now officially illegal in Wales. From today, anyone responsible for a child can face charges if found to have physically disciplined a young person in any way. Marking the end of the reasonable punishment defence, it means children will now get the same protection from assault as adults. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, morning all. It's about to go 11:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick, Christys and Anaya Falarian on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, last week P&O Ferries sacked 800 staff without warning, effective immediately in a move the Chancellor has called awful and wrong. The operator replaced staff with cheaper agency workers. In a statement, P&O Ferries said, quote, "We took this difficult decision as a last resort and only after full consideration of all other options, but ultimately we concluded that the business wouldn't survive without fundamentally changed crewing arrangements, which in turn would inevitably result in redundancies."
Well, Labour is forcing an emergency vote in Parliament today, following the sacking of these 800 P&O Ferries workers. And our South East of England reporter, Ellie Costello, joins us now from Westminster, where a protest is being staged later today. What's the latest, please, Ellie?
Well, good morning, Patrick and Anaya. I'm actually outside the DP World offices in central London first, which is in about an hour's time. We're expecting a protest to start here. Now, this is the parent company for P&O Ferries. They actually bought P&O Ferries in 2019, and anger has been brewing over the weekend. If you look into this company's finances, they are Dubai-based. They actually had a £683 million profit last year and received £10 £10 million from the furlough scheme from the government. There have been calls over the weekend for the British taxpayer to be reimbursed for that. So the protests are going to start here first before moving over to Westminster at lunchtime, where that debate is taking place this afternoon. What else has happened over the weekend is the RMT union is claiming that the British workers in Dover have been replaced by Indian seafarers on $2.38 an hour. They're describing that as poverty pay, and the Liverpool to Dublin routes are now being crewed with Filipino seafarers on a similar sort of wage. And unionists this weekend have been saying that this is a shocking exploitation of foreign labour and a gut-wrenching betrayal of British workers. Now, is this legal? That is the question that lots of people have been asking. Now, there is an understanding that P&O are able to do this because the contracts are based in Jersey, and therefore they come under international shipping law and not under the protection of British employment law. So that is why that protest is going to take place here in about an hour's time. They will then move across to Westminster outside the Houses of Parliament, where a debate is taking place this afternoon. As you said, Labour is going to force the emergency vote today on the sacking of 800 P&O workers over Zoom. They want the Conservatives to vote with them to do three things. That is to outlaw fire and rehire contracts, to suspend contracts with DP World, the Dubai-based company that I'm standing outside now, until this matter is resolved, and finally to remove it from the Transport Advisory Group. Now, Rishi Sunak, speaking over the weekend, said that P&O have treated their workers appallingly, and there also have been concerns about the safety of these vessels when they are reinstated, because these workers, these foreign workers, may not know the waters as well as British crew. Well, Grant Shapps has said that vessels will be subject to checks, and that crews will also be checked before being allowed to set sail. So it's going to be a very busy afternoon here, Patrick and Anaya, and I'm sure a lot of anger from the people that turn out to protest.
Yes, all right. Well, look, thank you very much, Ellie, for bringing us the latest on that issue. And I think it's opened up, Ellie Costello there, of course, our East of England reporter. Now, it's opened up a real kind of worms, this, hasn't it, what's gone on there? Because part of me is a bit conflicted. I mean, look, I think the way that P&O have behaved was absolutely disgraceful.
Awful.
You know, a pre-recorded Zoom call, right, to basically tell 800 staff that they're no longer working there anymore, having already hired agency staff, having already hired handcuffed trained security staff to essentially get them off the ships and stuff like that. I mean, it's a grotesque way to operate. But at the same time, if they carried on the way they were and they say they would go out of business, then those people wouldn't have had jobs anyway, would they? So what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it is a difficult one, especially since they've then hired foreign workers as well. I just don't think it is a very good look. And I do think the point that you made in the beginning, I think, is that for a lot of people, the most important one, understandably, the pandemic has been a massive challenge for businesses. They actually accepted furlough and so on. But the way that you treat people that have been working for you, some of them, I think, Ellie mentioned on Friday, that was up to 20 years, effectively. I mean, that is just awful. That is just awful.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Right, OK, well, we're just going to return to one of our key themes of this show today, and smacking your child, and indeed shaking them as well, apparently, is illegal in Wales. So it will mean now that smacking, hitting, slapping or shaking the child will become a criminal offence after the Welsh Government deemed such acts are not necessary when disciplining children. There are certain members of that Welsh Government, of course, who could, I think, potentially have disciplined their children better. But our Wales reporter, Lily Hewitson, has this report for us.
In Wales, smacking children will become a crime. The new law removes the legal defence of reasonable punishment, meaning anyone who smacks a child, even a parent or guardian, could be prosecuted for assault. The Welsh Government passed the law change 2 years ago. By banning smacking, ministers say children in Wales are now given the same protections from assaults as adults. But not everyone agrees. According to Welsh Government research, 1 in 4 people say physical punishment is needed to control children's behaviour, teach respect, and show boundaries. I spoke with Simon Calvert from the Be Reasonable campaign. They're against the introduction of the smacking ban in Wales.
And what we're talking about here is the mum who taps the toddler on the back of the legs or on the back of the hand. for doing something wrong. That's what we're talking about. The previous law was very clear that anything that a parent did which left anything more than transient reddening of the skin was already illegal. So the change that the senators made to the law, by definition, is only criminalising the mildest possible contact between a parent and their own child.
However, many support the ban. 38% of people said they did not agree generally with the physical punishment of children. Nearly 20% said there are other ways of ensuring good behaviour. And 10% said smacking is abuse or could lead to abuse.
The studies show there's really compelling evidence that there's no good things come from smacking or tapping your child, but there's a really broad range of harms, harms to the child's physical health, emotional health. It makes them more likely to have mental health problems as adults. It's associated with children growing up and smacking their own children, or even domestic abuse and domestic violence. This law isn't about criminalising parents or bringing the law in that way. This is about enabling useful discussion and debate and educating us all to parent in a more effective and kinder way. So we need more support for parents who are struggling.
Parents say using force on a child is wrong.
From my point of view, I don't understand why someone would have to smack a child. I guess that's kind of easy from my point of view because I've got a very well-behaved girl. I've never had to go to those sort of extremes, and nor would I even contemplate doing so. But I guess the ban coming in will help. Like if I see something, say in the park like this, if I see someone smacking a child, I wouldn't comment. However, this ban coming in will make it more easy for people to approach people and say, everything all right here?
Not everyone who smacks a child will be automatically prosecuted. Wales's 4 police forces have been encouraged to consider a rehabilitative alternative to prosecution if this is more appropriate. Lily Hewitson, GB News.
Well, that was Lily Hewitson, our Wales reporter, bringing us a very interesting report on the smacking ban that's just been put in place in Wales. I mean, according to the Welsh polls, more people actually do think in Wales that smacking is a reasonable, appropriate response to bad behaviour than people that actually think it should be criminalised. So it just, again, this is coming from the state, individuals who believe that they know better than everybody else about how to raise kids that they have no relation to or relationship with. And, this is not the first time this is being introduced on this Isles. In Scotland, they have something quite similar. It seems that it's England now, the last bastion of traditional discipline.
Traditional discipline. Yes, absolutely. It's every Englishman's right to... No, we won't go that far. Right, so we did run a poll on this, of course, today. Thank you very much to the thousands of you who took part. Should smacking your children be illegal? 82.4% of you said no. 17.6% of you said yes. And there's been a lot of noise about this in the inbox, as you can imagine. People saying that actually, hang on a second, they were smacked. It didn't really matter about them. What about mothers that are scared of their children's violent behaviour? They ring the police and get them to sort it out.
On that point about parents, I mean, I actually have heard a lot of parents are scared of their children nowadays. Honestly, their kids are coming home after going to school with a lot of these new ideas, completely different ways of believing in morals and attitudes. And, their kids are calling them racist, transphobic, misogynistic. And actually, a lot of parents that I've come across are actually scared of their own kids because they don't want to offend them. They're worried about offending their kids, and it's corroding the relationship between parent and child. And I think it's very sad.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think there is this push, as someone else did, it's way down my inbox now, but it was an email that we had in earlier on, which was basically saying that, parents, it's not the job of the parents to be friends with your child. It's nice if you are friends with your child, as it were, but actually, realistically, there is about instilling discipline in the home, and is smacking one way to do it? Oh, look, I don't know. Anyway, 11:48 is the time, and we're going to go now, because we're going to move on. Sorry, we're not disappearing off your screens, don't worry. Yes. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is set to deliver his spring statement, often referred to as the mini-budget, on Wednesday, with inflation spiralling.
Yes, some predictions are as high as 8.3%. National insurance set to rise next month from 12% to 13.25%, and a cost of living crisis worsening. But how is Scotland faring? Our Scotland reporter, Davy Donnison, joins us now. Thank you for joining us this morning, Davy. I mean, what does Scotland make of all that's going on?
Well, I think it's very much the same as the rest of the UK. People are struggling to pay the bills. Some bills have doubled. Some people say more than doubled in terms of heating and fuel bills. Obviously, we've got a fuel crisis at the moment due to what's happening elsewhere in the world, where petrol prices and diesel prices are soaring, so that's adding to the impact. And certainly a country like Scotland that's got very rural communities, you know, I'm hearing reports that some of the Northern Isles, Orkney, Shetland, paying £1.73 a litre of petrol and £1.78, £1.79 for a litre of diesel. So that's certainly going to have an impact on them. No red diesel, of course, come the 1st of April either. So that's again going to have impact in these rural communities which depend on that kind of subsidy. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. Alex Cole-Hamilton, the Lib Dem leader, is going to be here at Peak Scientific, the building over my shoulder, later today, and he's going to speak to us about the cost of living and what he wants to see happen. Previously, he's called on both the UK government and the Scottish government to do more to help those people really, really in need. You know, he's not talking just about people, you know, maybe have a decent salary and can probably soak up the cost and the rise in fuel prices, the rise in heating costs, but he's really talking about the people who are really, really struggling on a day-to-day living. You know, I've spoke to food banks previously as well on this programme, and, you know, they are struggling as well. They've got so many people now requesting help from them. So it just really shows you the impact that the cost of living crisis is having in the country.
Yeah, indeed, Davy. Thank you very much. Our Scotland reporter there, David Donaldson, just reporting on the cost of living crisis north of the border. So we'll be keeping you abreast of all of that as it progresses. But now, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed. We like this bit, don't we?
Yes, the local chippy is an iconic British high street staple, but the takeaway services have been hit hard by the cost of living crisis, and half may even have ended up closed. The cost of fryer oil has skyrocketed following the invasion of Ukraine, which produces the majority of vegetable oil in Europe. Russian fish imports have also slowed, leaving restaurants struggling to make a profit.
If we could just leave that.
The cost of living
on the
crisis
screen
is
there.
affecting everything from fuel prices to the cost of your chippy.
Well, last week we also reported, didn't we, that seagulls have got a favourite fish and chip shop as well, which I think is absolutely amazing. But anyway, a group of academics at the University of Essex have said that children's language should not be corrected as it could be a form of prejudice.
It doesn't, it just keeps going on and on.
Yeah, well, the linguists have suggested that as language is constantly evolving, there's no such thing as an incorrect pronunciation. You say pronunciation, don't you?
Pronunciation. I mean, it looks like it's spelled how you say it, but, well, additionally, a heightened concern about speech could act as a smokescreen for prejudice. I mean, I think this is really ridiculous. I studied languages throughout school and at university. I studied Arabic, and in Arabic there's a modern standard Arabic, which is the one that is used by governments and the media, and then you have something called Darija, which is the dialect, and there is a clear difference. It is totally normal. And if you speak English as a second language and you learned it, then you are going to learn a standard English. You're not going to learn ain't or is it. You know, it's not prejudice. It's just a standard way of speaking. And I find this offensive, quite frankly.
Yeah, and also like you're again. So we're not allowed to. You're not allowed to smack children anymore. You're not allowed to correct the grammar. Who gave kids all this power anyway? Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a fantastic story, really, a fascinating story that we're going to bring you right now, which is that two boys, aged 9 and 7 years old, have been found alive after 4 weeks missing in Brazil's Amazon rainforest.
Well, that is incredibly impressive. The two brothers set off from their home to find small birds, and after they failed to come home, authorities began a search, which was called off on February 26th. Incredibly, the pair were found 4 miles from their home by a tree cutter, hungry and thin, but amazingly still alive.
They told their parents that they'd eaten nothing and only survived by drinking rainwater. I mean, this is just absolutely incredible, isn't it? What a survival story.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard of that film Alive? There is a film that there was a kind of plane crash and many people...
Oh, I think I know the one you mean.
And they survived by cannibalism.
Yeah, they did. Was it in the Andes, I think, wasn't it? I mean, it's needs must, though, isn't it? It's needs must. But, I'm not sure I'd be that tasty, to be honest with you, so I wouldn't bother eating
Well,
it.
some of them just couldn't do it. They just couldn't.
No.
They just couldn't bring themselves to do it.
I reckon if I was there, you know, I'd have my morals and principles, but after 20 minutes of a rumbly stomach, I'd be eating anyone. Right, that's it from us here at To The Point, but we're going to go to the views to finish off the show. We'd like final word from you, our lovely viewers and listeners. And go on.
George says, I can see a lot of do-gooders flooding the police lines of calls, as well as some malicious neighbours with allegations of abuse. I mean, that unfortunately, that does open it up. And we had the pandemic where people were snitching on their neighbours.
Yes.
And then now this is clearly being carried on.
I think so, yeah. So once you've gone to court and been prosecuted, will they then take your child away? That's from D, and that's a cracking question, D. I'm not sure, but I suppose conceivably now you're getting done for child abuse. So it is, look, I don't know where, I don't know where I stand on it, but at the same time, you know, I would hope that I would never have to smack my child, but
likewise,
if they were extremely naughty or an incredibly dangerous situation and you need to act quickly, then I wouldn't want to rule it out.
Yeah, and I must admit, as I said earlier on in the programme, I wasn't hit as a kid, and I think I turned out okay.
Yeah.
But there's alternative parenting techniques that I think I respect.
Yes. Well, exactly. I was very, very, very rarely smacked, but whenever I was, I thoroughly deserved it. And I don't think I could have any complaints about that whatsoever. And as I said, when I got to about the age of 14 or 15, I could just get out of the way of my mum anyway, so it didn't really affect me too badly.
Mike says, what a load of twaddle.
Oh.
What a load of twaddle. I was smacked when young, which instilled discipline in me. I learned what not to do.
Yeah, there you go. Right, OK, well, that very much is it from us now at To The Point. But don't go away, because up next is the briefing with the wonderful Gloria De Piera. Stay tuned for that.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudier day compared to what many of us saw at the weekend, but staying bright and dry for most of us, and it will be a little warmer in the south as well. Areas of cloud are moving in from the west and from the south. That cloud thick enough in one or two spots to give the odd shower, for example, through parts of Wales and the Midlands. But for the vast majority, it's dry. Despite the extra cloud in the sky, it's bright and temperatures higher in the south compared to the weekend, 15 to 17 or even 18 Celsius, Cardiff to London. I think more like low teens further north for Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Then through the evening, a few showers arriving from the south. They'll be very hit and miss. Most places will miss them, and they'll be fleeting anywhere where they do occur. Away from the showers, there'll be a few clear spells, especially towards the northeast where a touch of frost is possible, and one or two fog patches in one or two spots as we start off Tuesday. But otherwise, it stays fine. High pressure is sitting to the east and low pressure to the west, and that's how things remain effectively through the rest of the week. So generally, that means that it's going to stay fine and increasingly sunny once again once Tuesday's early showers have pushed away. The cloud builds again into the afternoon, particularly across parts of the Midlands, Wales, Northern England and Southern Scotland. And once more, the odd shower is possible. But for the vast majority, sunny spells, certainly a brighter day in many spots, and a warmer day. 19 or 20 Celsius is possible somewhere like London or Cambridge, and those mid to high teens extend up towards Northern England and Southern Scotland. Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland seeing low teens. Into Tuesday evening, we'll see clear spells once again, and that leads us on to a sunny day on Wednesday, virtually across the board. A bit more cloud in the north on Thursday and Friday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically,